Good evening, everyone. This is Enrique Sanchez of Spanish United of Spanish United Podcast. Tonight we have a very special guest. Would you be kind enough to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Hi, my name is Ed Rodriguez.
Welcome. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Likewise, as we had spoke per se over email, tonight's topic has to do with Hispanic authors and what is the impact that they're doing in the industry in relation to children's literature, because today, even though there's more inclusion when it comes to authors and children's books, Hispanics don't represent a big demographic yet. So you as an author, explain a little bit how you got into the industry and, you know, what made you decide to become a children's author to begin with.
Well, I'm primarily an artist first. I consider myself an artist, and my parents are both born and raised in Puerto Rico, but I grew up in New York. But we visited Puerto Rico a lot as kids, and it had a special place for us. And then in the early 2000s, um, my parents retired and they moved back to Puerto Rico and they built a house there and whatnot. And I got to go with my kids for the first time and kind of see the island through their eyes. And we did all the usual stuff, the mountains and the caves, and we did the
Mm,
fortress and all that stuff. But what really stuck out to the kids was the Coqui frog.
mm,
And so I remember my, affection for the Coqui frog as well, and for most Puerto Ricans. And I went around looking for something featuring the Coqui for the kids, and I found a lot of kind of like tchotchke like stuff with the Coqui on it, but nothing really that I felt was like uh, for kids. So I started kind of researching it, and I recalled that when I had gone to I was working for Disney at that time, and I had gone to Paris, and I remember that Madeline was like front and center of every store, and that in London, Paddington Bear and
mm.
Winnie the Pooh were like front and center, and I was like, there's no story like that for Puerto Rico, and at first I was, I don't know, frustrated, but is the right word, but anyway, disappointed, I guess, and then I decided that you know what. Uh, there's an opportunity here to do something, to create something for the kids of Puerto Rico. And so I started, kind of procrastinated a long time, and then finally in 2010 I completed the book. And I wouldn't say I got into the industry. I kind of like did my own thing. The reality is that at that time there now like you mentioned, there's a lot of more inclusivity, and they're actually kind of looking for these kind of things. But when I first tried to get in, or when I first started looking into it, it really uh, didn't seem like there was a lot, people looking for those, like
Mm.
specific voices. So also like the self-publishing thing was starting to happen at the time, and whatnot. And I don't know, I just started researching it, and I just kind of figured out, through like learning stuff on the internet and whatnot, I
Mm.
figured out how to do it myself. So I I wound up actually going in the original version of the book. I self-published. I
Oh,
did
nice.
option to Roaring Book Press, which is part of Macmillan Kids at one point, but then I actually wound up taking them back because I think I did a better job with it in Puerto Rico anyway, um, than they did.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, because I myself, I am an author myself. I did some short stories when I was a kid. And but unfortunately, I wasn't able to get it published. Like I have like three books that I want to make. One that is two are that are for kids and one that's more like for adults in terms of maturity. And I've been trying to get into that for the longest time, but I kind of feel that it's kind of difficult to get into it today because they charge so much money in trying to publish something.
Well, you shouldn't be paying anything if a legitimate publisher picks up your book.
Hmm.
Uh, so that's a red flag right there if anybody's
Okay.
charging you to print the book. Now you're saying as far as like publishing it yourself, or you're saying going through a publisher?
I would like to do both. Like if I'm not able to publish it myself, I would like to do it like through a publisher. Like what would you recommend?
Well, so a couple of things. One is to get in with a big publisher, you really need to get an agent. So an agent is
Mm,
the one that kind of, because they get a lot of submissions, very rare that a publishing house will take you without an
right.
agent.
Right.
That's one. Secondly, self-publishing is, you have all the control to do it. It's quite a bit of like research that you got to do as far as like learning, how to do things. Um, but but there also is the upfront expense.
Hmm.
So one of the things that I'm actually looking into more now is a lot of authors are using the Amazon
Hmm.
KDP publishing. And the beauty of that is that you you don't have any printing or storage or shipping expenses.
Hmm.
So you make less money on the book, but you don't have any out-of-pocket expenses. So it's actually an attractive option for a lot of people. So I'm looking for that kind of because I'd like to do it. Kiki Koki, this is my third book, but it's my third book in 12 years, right?
Hmm.
So I'd like to do more like shorter subject books. So I'm looking into Amazon to see if that's going to work out for me.
Okay, nice, nice. One of the things that we do in Spanish United is that I'm not sure if Jose talked to you a little bit about Spanish United. We are a civil rights organization for Hispanic people, but we're also an educational social movement, meaning that we believe in education, and I believe that one of the things that helps Hispanic people, especially the kids and the youth, to better themselves is through education. Because when I was a kid, it was a real struggle. I'm talking because I'm from the 90s, so there was a lot of struggle with a lot of kids to read. And what was very sad to me is that there weren't too many Hispanic kids that wanted to read. And I really believe that one way to get a lot of the youth, particularly and the younger generation, is to get them interested in literature. And I think why by doing that is that there needs to be more focus on, for example, like children's books, or let's say graphic novels, kind of like manga or like that type of thing, that could relate to the Hispanic people. Because like you were saying, back then, like, when I was growing up, it was either Paddington Bear, it was My Pet Monster, and quite a other different characters, but there wasn't really too many characters that a lot of the kids could identify with. Like, I remember back in the day in Sesame Street, the only two characters that people could relate to was Maria and Louise from Sesame Street. So it's like, I think it's
Well,
very
Sesame Street
important.
was ahead of their time.
Yeah, of course, of
When I was
course.
a kid, forget it. That was it was just them, Zorro, and Ricky Ricardo. That's about it.
Exactly. So, I really believe that, there needs to be more emphasis on education. And I believe that if there's more Hispanic authors, particularly those that try to push, literacy into kids and to the youth, I think that would help a lot of the youth not only to, find literature interesting, but at the same time, it will motivate them to go into higher learning. Because our concern is that even though many Hispanics are going into college, there is still a very high dropout rate for Hispanic youth in the United States, even in Puerto Rico, because I'm also Puerto Rican myself. And I have seen that it's detrimental that to our people as a community for economic mobility, that if they don't get a high school education, it's going to be hard for them to even earn a basic wage. Because a basic education is needed for everything. So I think it's very needed, especially today more than ever before, that there needs to be more Hispanic authors, Hispanic educators, and especially making more kids books that the Hispanic youth can relate to. Let it be, kids from Puerto Rico, from Mexico, from Dominican Republic, Cuba, whatever, but that they could relate to.
Yeah, yeah, definitely important for kids to identify and kind of see themselves portrayed. Because like I said, for a long time, it's like, when I was growing up, you didn't really see yourself or anything that kind of reminded you, of your heritage or your people or anything like that. It was
Right.
far and in between.
Right. Like I remember when I first got into anime back when I was a kid, 1987, I was 4. The first anime that I actually got into that was actually pretty unique. It's kind of like a rarity nowadays. I'm not sure if you ever heard of it. It was called Esteban and the Mysterious Cities of Gold. Have you ever heard of that series?
No.
It was a series that had to do with a Spanish kid, an Incan kid, and I think another tribe. I don't know if where from Latin America, where basically they were coming into the new, well, Esteban, the Spanish boy, was coming to the new world because back then the Spaniards were looking for, gold, for riches. And it was very unique because this was at a time when anime was basically underground. It was not mainstream. Like in order for you to find it, you had to go to like Blockbuster Video and go into the special interest section and find it because it was not mainstream. And I remember when I saw it, I could relate to the character because the character looked like me. He had a Spanish name and he was like a hero because like you were saying, like back then, like the stereotype of a lot of Hispanic peoples that they were either like stereotypes, let's say Ricky Ricardo, or they were like seen as villains. It's like you didn't really see too many Hispanic characters that were, positive. So, that was something that really caused me to get into not only anime, but get into drawing and writing. So I think it's very important that we nurture um creativity into the minds of our youth because many of the people within Spanish United say what happens to those that are not academically inclined or cannot do whatever, like they could still be productive, but if they have a talent, let's say they cannot like play dribble a ball or you know hit a bat or whatever, but if they have a talent for drawing or writing, even if they don't have like a high level of education, I think that should be nurtured because there's a lot of talent that I've seen that has gone wasted that could have been invested properly.
Yeah, yeah. And it's still like we were talking earlier, things are definitely changing and people are looking like companies are making an effort to be a lot more diversified. So it's a great opportunity for anybody young who's like, interested in those fields, because there is a lot of opportunity and people are finally telling those stories. So
Mm.
still a long way to go, but I think it's definitely going in the right direction in everything in film and anything to do with the arts. It seems like they really have embraced it.
Right, right. And I remember when I went to the House of Puerto Rico, the first thing that I saw was the Kiki Koki character and the little plush, and that's what, Jose was showing to me. And I got to read a little bit of it. And I'm very glad that you actually made it bilingual because again, there's a lot of Hispanic kids that don't speak English and they would like to read something, but they cannot read it. So that's actually a very good idea that you did to make it bilinguals, that it's both English and Spanish. So that way the kids can understand what they're reading.
Yeah, the second book I made bilingual. The first book is kind of lengthy, and I had done two versions of it. I did an English version and a Spanish version. And then the second book, because it was a lot less words in it, I wound up doing that one bilingual. And I have a third book that's coming out in the spring, and I'm doing that one bilingual. And at some point, I'd like to redo the original one if I can figure out how to redesign it without altering
Right.
it to make it bilingual as well. Yeah, people really like it. People of both languages like it. A lot of people you'll find that a lot of your customers that buy books for children are actually the adults. So like
Mm,
grandparents and parents have a lot more say than even the kids.
mm,
Parents tend to kind of steer their kids towards what books they like. Um, Especially something like that where they're because what I found is that a lot of grandparents will like email me and say like, oh, I'm ordering this book for my grandchild because I want them to learn Spanish or I want them to keep, the heritage alive and
right.
to know about what you know what I mean? So there's that kind of connection. So a lot of times is that the kids, even Hispanic kids, are buying the book in English because that's their primary language, or
Mm.
or there's Spanish speaking kids that the parents want them to learn English.
Right,
So there's like it goes. So it's a great, yeah, for especially for things that are his, because it's a basically a bilingual country for
right.
a lot. Yeah, and Puerto Rico is very bilingual.
Oh,
So
of course, of course. So I also wanted to ask, like, have you made your series like into a cartoon or to a movie? Is it just strictly literature for now?
it's literature right now. I actually had optioned it to a studio here in LA, and um, I've done a lot of work on it as a TV series as well, and we pitched it around and stuff like that, and got great feedback. But I just kind of came to the point where, um, when you option something, you kind of lose control of it
Hmm.
to a certain extent. Like if a so and because I've kind of worked in the industry, I kind of knew not to time up my rights totally. So the studio I was working with was pitching it with me, and but let's say if a big studio like a Warner Brothers or Disney or something like that were interested in it, they usually want you to like they want to take the rights and they kind of want to shut it down so they can
Right,
kind of work on it and then relaunch it, and that could
right,
take 5 years, 10 years, and I just was like, I was like, I'm kind of like, it's kind of keeping me from keeping it going myself. So
right,
I'm kind of keeping it going through books and other projects that I'm working on. And like I said, I'm looking to do more like shorter content for books, possibly through Amazon, um, and maybe comics and stuff like that. Uh, and then if the opportunity comes and it's the right fit to option it for something for film, I'm more than open to it.
mm.
But for right now, I'm not um, actively pursuing it.
Yeah, it's the same thing with me. Like originally when I started my three stories, they were originally literature. Like I have one book which is, technically a novel, but there's no illustrations. While the other two that I made, they have illustrations. But I've been putting it off for now in terms of making it probably into a series or into a movie because I'm trying to copyright it first, and copyright is extremely expensive. It's like, oh my God, it's ridiculous how they make copyright so impossible. So I'm waiting for the right time to have my word copyright, because even though technically it's copyright once you make it, but if you don't have it under patent registered under your name, people could take it and claim it their own. So I'm trying to wait until the right time to get my word copyrighted, because I feel that it's something unique, that it's not something that you see too often. And I really believe that it's a way of reaching out to different audiences. Like I want to reach like the kids, the teenagers, and the adults. So it's something that I've had as a project for a while. And I also wanted to ask, like the the demographics of the people that buy your books. Like, are they usually majority Puerto Ricans? Are they other Hispanics? Or are they like a mixture of the two?
I have gotten book orders from like one of these days. I keep saying, "Oh, I should track it," because I've gotten from almost every state. And then based on the names, they're not all Puerto Rican, So I've shipped books to Utah and to, I don't know, Nebraska, and and like places that you wouldn't necessarily expect.
Right.
So no, and I get a lot of the people buy my books are tourists. So
Really?
so kind of like they're like where where I was 10 years ago, whatever, when I was looking around for something, and the book seems to appeal to them as well. So they, because when you're on a trip, you want to take home
Oh, of
something that
course.
reminds you of the island. So people are buying it for, either they're there with their kids and they pick it up, or they want to take it back home as a gift or something. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's yeah, but it's all over. But obviously a lot of Puerto Ricans, but a lot of other people have bought it too. And even just people looking for Spanish language books, I found.
Mhm.
So like I did a couple, they had I've done a few like LA book shows, and I would get a lot of teachers that were looking for bilingual books, especially back when I first started. And there wasn't that many out there. So
Have you done like anything at the Vincent Price Museum over at East LA Community College?
no, I didn't.
I asked because they actually have a huge Hispanic Chicano library there, and that would be a good place maybe like to like promote your book is just a suggestion.
Oh, what is it called? The Vincent Price Gallery?
Yeah, it's called the Vincent Price Museum, which is a museum slash university. Like the East LA Community College is right next. It's basically on the same grounds, but the museum is kind of separate, but it's on the same school property.
Okay, I'll look into it for sure. Thank you for that, Lee.
Because my mom is also an artist, and she was also looking into trying to promote some of her paintings. So and I also remember that when I was in San Diego last week when I met Jose and Tony for the business meeting, he had also mentioned that there are many places like for authors and stuff. So that is probably something that I'm trying to look into myself. But I was really amazed that there's actually like a storybook character that's based off our people, our heritage, because the coqui frog is not really known, outside of Puerto Rico. So it's pretty interesting to see like a traditional animal mascot from our island that's, a story that's made out of.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, when I first looked into, I was surprised that there was a couple of things done, but they were like very like the drawing was always like a real frog, you know.
Right.
And I kind of maybe because I worked at Disney for like 15 years, I kind of had that kind of like sensibility of turning it into like more of a enchanted story, so to speak. Um, and um, yeah, and I looked into it, and the story that I developed was based off of like the Taino legends. Um, but the Taino legends were a little bit dark, you know.
Hmm.
It was a little bit almost foreboding of like in the original story, Kiki Koki, or is not is the Koki. Koki is a boy who's kind of vain. There's a couple of them,
Hmm.
but they all kind of have like similar themes. But he's kind of vain and he wants to touch the face of the moon, so he like reaches into the river. And he's a boy at this point. He's a
Right.
Taino,
He's
and he
human.
tries to touch the face of the moon on the river, and he falls in, and he's drowning and he turns into a cookie frog. So that was one story, and then there was another one about and then he's never found, and then the 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 Taino people are looking for him, and they call out his name and stuff like that. So I kind of that was my inspiration, but then I kind of just gave it a little bit more of a happier ending,
Oh, that's
uh,
nice.
where he turns back into a boy, and then the frogs he winds up being a hero in the when he's amongst the frogs, and then the frogs are the ones looking for him, and so they
Mm.
call his name to this day because they didn't see him transform back into a boy.
Right. That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
I really think it's really awesome what you're doing. I really think you are promoting the culture in a positive light and also educating people that may not know about Puerto Rico, know about the history of Puerto Rico. So that's a good productive way of doing so.
Oh, thank you. Thank the probably the most gratifying thing is how many kids and how many teachers will like send me pictures of like plays that they've put on of Kiki Koki.
Oh,
And
that's
so
nice.
it's really I was a little bit nervous going in, because and it was embraced by the people on the island as like kind of like, the quintessential cookie story. So I mean, it just proved to me that it was lacking, that I didn't want to like overstep my bounds, kind of
Hmm.
being a gringo,
Right, of course.
having lived in New York, but when you're a Puerto Rican that sometimes we have even more affection than than uh than someone who's born there
Right,
because
absolutely.
have that affection for the island.
Right, absolutely. Like I remember when I went to Puerto Rico in 2018, the only comic book character that I actually saw over there was La Boriqueña. I actually picked up a copy when I was over there, and it's actually basically like the Puerto Rican version of Wonder Woman, and I saw that it spoke about all the different social issues, especially when it came with the hurricane and
Yeah.
introducing all of the different like figures, Puerto Rican history, of music, of government, and that's actually a good thing for the kids and for the young people to see because it gets them involved.
Yeah. I actually met Edgardo, the writer,
Oh,
um,
nice.
went down when in San Diego at the casita.
Yes, actually that's what Jose was telling me that they actually got to meet him once and he was
Yeah.
actually doing a convention. Like when I was over there, I was actually doing like a brief panel for Hispanic artists and authors in the comic book industry. So that was one of my main, drives of going down there was to speak on the issue of inclusivity of Hispanic artists and authors. So anyway, I wanted to tell you, Ed, thank you so much for being on the
Thank you,
show.
and thank you for what you're doing. As you guys are doing a great job too, as far as you know, education and looking out for people's civil rights and just kind of looking out for the people. That's great.
Absolutely. And one of our mottos is Spanish United is culture over color. So we are about uniting all Hispanic people, regardless of nationality, color, or creed. We're all descendants of Spaniards, Africans, Native people, and even though may one group of people may look more dominant than the other, in terms of appearance, but we all have the same DNA. So that's the whole point is bringing Hispanic unity. So for your listeners that are out there, we are available on all social media platforms. We are on Spanish United, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and we also take donations. Anyone that wants to donate to Spanish United could do so. We are a nonprofit organization. We are on PayPal and Cash App. And as soon as I'm finished with the recording here, I will send you the link.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Have yourself a good evening.
Alrighty. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye, Rick.